Margaret Hay sat alone at table 7 in the Grand Meridian dining room, her elegant navy suit a stark contrast to the warm golden glow of the chandeliers above. She had flown 12 hours from Tokyo to attend her late husband's business partner's funeral, but the memorial service had left her feeling more isolated than ever. Now, in this upscale restaurant where everyone spoke English with easy confidence, she found herself trapped behind a language barrier she hadn't anticipated would matter so much. The menu might as well have been written in code. She pointed hesitantly at items, hoping for the best, but when the waiter asked about preparation styles and side dishes, panic flickered across her face. Around her, other diners chatted comfortably, their laughter filling the spaces between clinking silverware and soft music. No one seemed to notice the well-dressed woman struggling with something as simple as ordering dinner. Sarah Chun, the restaurant manager, watched from across the room with growing concern. She had noticed Mrs. Hay's discomfort, the way her hands trembled slightly as she tried to communicate, the embarrassment coloring her cheeks. Sarah knew that feeling. Her own parents had immigrated from Taiwan decades ago, and she remembered countless moments when language became a wall instead of a bridge. She was about to approach the table herself when she felt a small hand slip into hers. 8-year-old Emma looked up at her mother with those bright, knowing eyes that always seemed to see more than a child should. Emma had been doing her homework in the back office, as she often did after school, while Sarah finished her shift. The little girl wore her favorite green dress covered in cheerful sunflowers, a birthday gift from her grandmother. Emma had been learning Japanese for 2 years now, ever since she became fascinated with anime and asked her mother if she could take lessons. Sarah had found a tutor in their neighborhood, a retired teacher who held classes in her living room every Saturday morning. What started as a childhood whim had blossomed into genuine skill. "Mama, that lady needs help," Emma whispered, tugging gently on Sarah's sleeve. Sarah hesitated. Restaurant policy didn't exactly encourage bringing children into the dining room during service, but something in her daughter's earnest expression made her reconsider. "Are you sure you want to help, sweetheart?" Emma nodded firmly and walked straight toward table 7 with the fearless confidence only children possess. Sarah followed close behind, her heart swelling with equal parts pride and protective concern. "Konbanwa," Emma said softly as she approached, her small voice carrying the careful pronunciation her tutor had drilled into her. Margaret's head snapped up, her eyes widening in disbelief. For a moment she simply stared at this child in the sunflower dress, as if she might be imagining things. Then her face transformed, relief and gratitude washing over her features, like sunrise breaking through storm clouds. "Konbanwa," Margaret replied, her voice thick with emotion. The two began speaking in Japanese, Emma's childish accent mixing with Margaret's elegant Tokyo dialect in a conversation that flowed like water finding its path. Sarah stood back and watched, understanding nothing of the words but everything of the meaning. Emma was explaining the menu, pointing to items and describing them in Japanese, while Margaret nodded and smiled, occasionally touching the child's hand, as if to confirm she was real. Other diners had begun to notice now. The busy restaurant seemed to quiet slightly, people glancing over with curiosity at the unusual pair. The elderly businessman at table 3 watched with misty eyes, perhaps remembering his own moments of connection across unexpected divides. The young couple by the window smiled at each other, moved by something they couldn't quite name. For 15 minutes, Emma stood beside Margaret's table, helping her order, asking about dietary preferences, even recommending the chef's special salmon, because Margaret had mentioned loving fish. When the order was finally placed, Margaret reached out and gently cupped Emma's face in her hands. She spoke in Japanese, her words spilling out in a grateful rush. Emma listened carefully, then translated for her mother. She says her husband died 3 months ago and she's felt invisible ever since, like no one really sees her anymore. But tonight, I made her feel seen again. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. She squeezed Emma's shoulder, unable to speak past a lump in her throat. Margaret wasn't finished. She opened her elegant handbag and pulled out a small silk pouch, pressing it into Emma's hands. Inside was a delicate origami crane made from shimmering paper, its wings catching the light. She says in Japan, cranes symbolize hope and healing. Emma explained, cradling the gift like treasure. She folds one every day since her husband passed, and she wanted to have this one because I gave her hope tonight. Margaret spoke again, and Emma translated. She says kindness doesn't need a passport and that I should never stop using my gifts to build bridges. Sarah knelt down and hugged her daughter, no longer caring about restaurant protocol or professional boundaries. Some moments mattered more than rules. Margaret stood and bowed deeply to both of them, the formal gesture carrying more weight than any words could hold. Throughout the rest of her meal, Margaret seemed lighter somehow, as if Emma's simple act had lifted a burden she'd been carrying alone for too long. She ate slowly, savoring each bite, occasionally glancing over at Emma, who had returned to her homework in the back, but kept peeking out to wave. When Margaret finished, she insisted on meeting the chef to compliment the meal. She left a generous tip with a note written in both Japanese and carefully printed English letters. Thank you for raising a daughter who sees people. The world needs more eyes like hers. That night, as Sarah tucked Emma into bed, she asked her daughter what made her want to help Mrs. Hayes. Emma thought for a moment, hugging the origami crane to her chest, then said simply, she looked like she needed a friend and I could be one. So I was... Sarah kissed her daughter's forehead, marveling at the wisdom wrapped in such a small package. The next morning, Sarah found a package at the restaurant's front desk. Inside was a beautiful children's book of Japanese folk tales, inscribed with a message that Emma read aloud with careful attention to each character. For Emma, who reminded me that language is just one way we speak to each other, kindness is another, and it's the one everyone understands. Emma added the book to her growing collection, and the crane to a special place on her nightstand. But the real gift was a lesson both she and her mother carried forward. In a world that often felt divided by differences, connection was always possible for those brave enough to reach across the spaces between. Sometimes all it took was a child in a sunflower dress and the willingness to see another person's need. That was the language that mattered most. In the comments below, tell me from which country you are watching my video. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more stories about everyday moments of human connection. Leave a comment below telling us about a time when a small act of kindness made a big difference in your life.